guess we'll begin since we hear the chiming of the bells in the background. I'm Severin Sant with the Career Development Center.
I'm Brett Boudreau, also with the Career Development Center.
I do employer relations primarily, which means I work with companies and organizations trying to increase opportunities in jobs and internships for our office.
I do undergrad advising, I do interview prep, I also do a lot of outreach to alumni.
So one of the things I oversee, especially in the fall, is the on-campus recruiting that's done for finance. And it's a very big deal and very intensive in the fall. And I felt my first time around last fall that we could be doing a better job better preparing you and informing you about the options that are available, the timelines that are involved, and what the real kind of bottom line requirements are. So Brett and I have been kind of kicking this around for a while. This is a program we've never done before. Candidly, I've found it somewhat difficult to put together, and if any of you go this route, you'll understand in a couple of years one of the main reasons why, and that is we really felt it was important to have some of the younger alums, people who have been where you are now fairly recently, here to talk to you about their experience, what they might have done differently if they could have, in a real way that you could relate to. And I thought that was really, really important. Unfortunately, the analyst, which is sort of the first step in the career after college, is the most overworked, the least powerful, and the most susceptible to random assignments at the last minute. So all that is to say that we don't have the two young alums that I'd really hoped we would have. The closest we have is a member of the class of 2011, which is close, but not as close as I'd hoped. So we're really happy that we have Peter Espy, class of 2000, and A.S. Bamla from class of 2011. They'll be joining us shortly, but we wanted to kind of tell you just a few overview things before we yield the evening to them. And again, this is our collective first time doing this, so we'll really value your feedback after this is over, knowing the lengths we've gone to try and plan things, so it'd be nice, but things that you feel we should improve down the line. So Brett?
The reason we targeted sophomores and first years is these banks and these positions really have very aggressive timelines for hiring. Pretty much immediately when you get back on campus, you will see positions posted. And there are things that you can and should be doing now, over the summer, to get ready. Both Peter and A.S. will be talking about some of those things tonight. After tonight, use us as a resource. We're here to help you. So when you leave this evening and you say, okay, now I have a sense of the game plan of what I need to do, where do I start? How do I do that? Come see us. The Career Development Center, we're here all summer. We're here to help you facilitate the learnings and the knowledge you're gaining this summer so you're competitive when you come back and can hit the ground running when you get back on campus in September. Because if you try to start at that point, it's going to be too late for a lot of people. You need to be doing it and laying the groundwork now.
We're going to be talking a lot about what people refer to as Wall Street tonight. There are a lot of careers in financial services, various parts of finance that aren't really Wall Street. As Brett said, one of the reasons we want to do this now before you leave for the summer is the aggressive timelines associated with Wall Street, bulge bracket banks, etc. But if you find after tonight that you're not interested in this world, but you still are interested in finance, there are many other options for you, and we're going to be having workshops about those options in the fall. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention for international students that are here, there are options for you. We'd like to have kind of a smaller Skype session where maybe you can talk with some recent alums who have managed to get analyst positions. it can be more challenging, and I think you can probably benefit from their insight. It's its own thing, let's put it that way. So,
with that, there are alumni who are working in financial services broadly defined in almost every city where you are, and alumni are typically very willing to have conversations with you and help you out and give their advice. After tonight, in addition to coming to see us, we can connect you with other alumni who can provide their insight and talk about their experience, and particularly those alumni that are 1-2 years out who were in your shoes just a couple years ago. They're happy to get on phone calls or meet you for coffee, but we can only help you as much as we know you need help and want help. So you can make an appointment, come see us, so we can help you. That's why we're here. We're here to support you as you go through this process.
So enough of us talking. You're not really here to hear us. You can see us anytime. I'd like to introduce Peter Espy, class of 2000, director with Credit Suisse, and all-around college supporter in many different ways. Peter?
Thank you for those welcoming remarks. It's certainly nice to be back on campus, and I guess, by way of a slightly longer introduction, again, Peter Espy. So I was class of 2000, and I was studying art history. Well, I was actually ambitiously a triple major. I was an econ, poli-sci, art history major. I was, however, unambitious in my GPA, and I found myself having to drop one upon my senior year. So I actually graduated with an art history and political science, a degree in art history and political science, and it really, I guess where I'm going with some of my introductory remarks here is that there is no one path to Wall Street, and I think the sooner you guys learn that, the better, frankly. Certainly some of the best experiences and the most educational experiences I had for my career that is now ultimately on Wall Street was in art history. So I guess what you should take away from the entirety of this evening is we'll view this as a great success if each and every one of you go away and think about what are the questions that you want to ask those that are either in the profession or those that are knowledgeable. So let me start with, I guess before I dive into all that, let me start with some thank you remarks. Severin and Brett, putting this event together is no small challenge, and certainly there were a few chuckles in my office before I headed up here today, and I guess one of my colleagues asked me, you understand the irony in all this? And I said, and I'm not sure I do. And they said, had this been something that was offered and had you attended, two of those things were highly unlikely while I was at Trinity, there was a high likelihood that you would never have pursued a career in Wall Street. And I think that's quite true. I share with you this cautionary tale, not to discourage you from pursuing a career on Wall Street, but to reflect upon a truth that many of us often lose sight in. And that's, there's nothing that you're going to learn today, and no decisions you're going to make over the next 12 months or 18 months that's going to ensure that you have a rewarding and fulfilling career in finance or any profession for that matter. It's going to be the bits of information and the difficult decisions you make each and every day that's going to govern your success, and I truly believe that. In fact, I think the success, like as I started to say, of this event will not be measured in how many offers this group gets for next summer. It's really going to be in how few of you come this fall, this winter, are saying, well, if I'd only known, or what if. That's not to say if the end of that sentence is, if I had only known that I was so lazy. In that regard, we're not going to be able to help you. But the idea is that come 6 months from now, you'll have the tidbits and you'll have the leads that the aspirational person in this room is going to go out and chase those down and find out what's important to build and develop their career. So I guess, launching into our prepared remarks here, what are the things that, in my opinion, I think you should know? It's when you're looking for a job, understand the marketplace. Know what kind of job you're looking for. I think we often threw caution to the wind, and I certainly said, oh, I want to be an investment banker. that's coming from a gentleman who thought Morgan Stanley made drills. I truly believed, I thought they were a drill manufacturer, and that's Stanley was another name. And I simply, I didn't know what to expect, and it was because my family and the people that I looked up to were investment bankers. And candidly, within, and we'll discuss some of this, what falls in the realm of investment banking is quite broad. And I spoke to AS on the way up here. I mean, the two jobs that we're hiring the most for in our investment bank are in general counsel, so legal and compliance, and IT. So if you want to work at an investment bank, the best likelihood you would have is pursuing a degree in law or IT. Now, that's not necessarily what people in this room want to hear, but those are kind of the truths. And so understand the marketplace that you're pursuing a career in, and know the opportunities. You're not looking for the job you want, you're looking for the job that's being offered. You know, I don't want to discount those that are passionate about the studies that they partake in and the goals that they have for their career, but you know, the fact of the matter is you're going to have plenty of opportunities throughout your career to develop that career path. I think you need to be aware of what's available to you, and that's not to say that you can't pursue investment banking, for example, at Deutsche Bank, and you can't pursue legal and compliance at Credit Suisse. At the end of the day, I firmly believe you're looking for what's available, and you'll find a way to apply the skills and the knowledge that you've learned at Trinity College to be successful in any role. And you know, there's a term that we use quite liberally in our world, which is you know, lateral hiring or internal mobility. You know, I can't look to any great leader on Wall Street or in any company for that matter that hasn't moved around and pushed the limits of what's their comfort zone as well as what's their intellectual capacity. So I feel very strongly about look for the companies that embody the culture that you feel strongly about or that you identify with. Find a way in the door to that organization and then find your way throughout that organization. But again, it all starts with knowing what's available to get you in the door. Obviously know what employers are looking for. That's not to say we are just building resumes for the sake of having strong resumes, but start thinking about the requisite coursework, GPAs, extracurriculars, leadership opportunities, because those are, and again, we'll talk about this further, but those are the things that you're going to be evaluated on come interview day. And then perhaps this is a liberal arts major in me, is know thyself. And this is one where most people fall flat. You know, they do all the requisite coursework and they've got the great resume, but they don't know why they're pursuing the career that they're pursuing. And I can shed a little bit of light as to why this is important and how it's applicable, but it really comes down to a little bit of soul searching and trial and error and engaging in forums like this. And again, pushing and testing the boundaries and reflecting upon that and seeing how you measure up not only academically, but motivationally and culturally with those that you're, you know, in essence competing with. So progressing a little bit, going back to this notion of kind of know the landscape and know the marketplace. We took a lot of liberties in sketching this out, but it's perhaps let's look at it as a roadmap, so to speak, of within the world, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to focus on, but it does give you the spectrum of the boutique, which tend to be very product specific, or I should say one or two product specific, so it's typically an M&A driven shop, and that will run, you know, anywhere from your Berkshires up to some of the Lazard platforms that, again, are working more towards what we call this integrated bank model. But so as you move from a boutique, again, predominantly M&A, but could be finance or advisory related, into a middle markets platform that will offer everything from your more traditional M&A advice, as well as some sales and trading capabilities, some broker-dealer capabilities, all the way, and then moving as we, again, this is not intended to be one is better than the other, it's just a function of more or less the product suite that they are offering. So as we're moving to the right of the page, we're talking about the bulge brackets. We prefer the term integrated bank model, meaning that we offer kind of the full complement of full suite of products and services to all the clients in the financial services space. And so I think a lot of the remarks that you'll hear tonight are going to be geared more towards those companies in the bulge bracket space. And candidly, while there are probably in quantum more opportunities at the bulge brackets, they're also very they're very competitive. So I think a lot of expectation and level setting needs to happen kind of right now. I mean, at the end of the day, a Credit Suisse, a Deutsche Bank, a Goldman, they're going to extend maybe 1 or 2 offers to Trinity College students across their entire integrated bank model. And that may mean 0 in investment banking. That may mean 0 in capital markets. It may mean 0 in equity research. It may mean 1 in IT. And that's the one that Trinity gets allocated at Credit Suisse, for example. So, you know, a little bit of it is the luck of the draw. I mean, I'd like to think we make our own luck. So, but just keep that in mind as you are going down the path of trying to secure your first career, wherever it may be. Cast the net wide and be engaged. Lot to talk about on this page. This was my attempt to kind of decipher and break down all the components of kind of the fully integrated bank model. Again, going up through my early stages, I wouldn't say of my career, but to some degree the early stages of my career, I identified Credit Suisse as an investment bank with its full complement of, you know, banking services. But you know, it really kind of, it wasn't until year 2, year 3 where I really fully appreciated all the aspects of the business. And so when you hear people talk about an investment bank, it could be any number of things. It could be, and I'll use Credit Suisse just because it's most comfortable to me, but it could be Credit Suisse, the bank, and that includes our private banking, our wealth management, our asset management, our retail banking, our consumer banking in all countries and all regions. That could be their vision of an investment bank, or it could be simply the practice of investment banking, which is this small little box at the top, and it's probably the smallest division within our entire bank. Yet it continues to carry this cachet of being that's what the investment banking world is all about. We only have about 700 investment bankers out of an employee base of approximately 50,000. So it gives you a sense of where our resources are dedicated and aligned, and that's commensurate with, frankly, the fee opportunity that we see. So we believe it's appropriate for us to have 700 bankers against the opportunities within the advisory space, recognizing that along with, you know, the advice we give, we need to supply capital and other transaction services. So it's, at the end of the day, for us, it's really about a return on broadly defined equity. So I guess what I'm starting to say here is that be open to all aspects. If what's really important to you is working at a bulge bracket, consider all the different opportunities that exist under that roof. And as I said before, I mean, some of the biggest opportunities, particularly for us right now, lie in this operations, IT, and legal compliance, and that is not, shouldn't be a surprise. That's very much a function of the regulatory environment that we're in today. So that's not to say that you should all run off and become computer science majors, but it's something to consider. You're gonna have to differentiate yourself, not only from the person sitting next to you, but from the 7,000 other applicants we're gonna have next summer for our internship program. So I guess we could spend some time talking about this slide. I would love for it to be a part of a Q&A session, but I do want to give you a little bit of flavor of kind of what you should expect in any one of these groups, and going through it relatively quickly. Well, let's keep investment banking as the title altogether, because whether or not you're working in the advisory business in the banking department, or if you are working in FID or in equities, your job is to advise clients. And that may come in the form of M&A advice. It may come in the form of equity raises, debt distributions, you know, other transaction-related advice, and where your client base could either be what we call issuing clients. I mean, these could be your Home Depots of the world, or your Kmarts and your Apples, who are raising capital through your advisory services, or this could be what we traditionally call the buy side. This is going to be your Fidelity, your PIMCO, your WAMCOs, and these are asset managers. And so you'll start to see that there's linkage, somewhat ironically, within an investment bank. We have, in many instances, we have an asset management business that's competing with our clients in the investment banking business. That just happens to be the same group of clients that are in our private bank that are then putting money into our retail bank so we can lend money out of our corporate bank to one of their competitors. So there is a lot of interconnectedness, and I think that's one of the things that I found most fascinating about the bulge bracket model is you've got a number of just inconsistent behaviors that ultimately lead to a model that is very much skinny down and simplistic in the form that it's a return on capital, it's a return on equity game, and it's a series of very accomplished professionals trying to make this web work. And I think that's where having what we'll talk about a little bit later is kind of being able to identify your own skill set, but it's where it's important to have marketers and analysts and economists all kind of working together to make this whole system come together in an efficient and profitable way. So I'll kind of leave us with this slide. Hopefully we can have some Q&A, but just recognize that you'll find clients overlap in a number of different areas, and that opportunities within the bank aren't not necessarily what you thought they were at once. There's a lot of ways in the door here and a lot of opportunities to grow your career, so don't pigeonhole yourself just quite yet. This is probably what's most interesting to all of you, and I apologize, it's probably not going to be efficient for you to take notes, so I think what we'll try to do is distribute this later. But this is a snapshot. I literally just went into our CS website and downloaded all the opportunities that we have for summer internships. This would actually be for this coming summer, but we have to assume that they'll be the same next year, with the idea being that there was a time, and that time was only about 15 years ago when I started, when you either applied for an investment banking internship or a sales and trading internship. And the numbers were roughly 300 students and about 400 students, respectively, and globally. Now we offer, and I will toggle, but I will toggle back, but each one of these has their own unique internship program. They have their own unique hiring timeline, and they have their own unique evaluation criteria. And they're not small in number. So again, I'm trying to give you another flavor of all the different opportunities that are out there for you. And I think one of the biggest challenges we experienced over the last recruiting year and the year before that was that everyone still had this idea in their head that they needed to be an investment banker or they needed to be in sales and trading. And no matter how hard we pushed, the idea of submitting your application for an IB COO just wasn't sexy enough. Well, these groups were actually prepared to hire more Trinity students than the two that I just mentioned. So I'm beating you over the head with this a little bit, but the idea is, at a minimum, make sure you're exploring all the options that are available to you, and go and do your homework on each one of these, because I suspect you're all very smart, but I do question whether or not you actually know what any one of these does. I guarantee you, I couldn't tell you what half of these do and what the opportunities that exist in any of them without doing homework. So again, take this opportunity to examine, explore, and then literally the internet is a great resource that I really didn't have when I was starting this process, and you're going to learn a lot about a firm's culture, their ambitions, their management style, and their opportunities, again, by digging through their website. And I'm going to go on a tangent here a little bit, because there's a theme that I've heard used a little too liberally, which is it's all about networking. It's all about who you know. That's an aspect of it. Certainly who you know is helpful. But networking for me is not about going out and securing a job. It's about going out and securing information to help you make an informed decision about what type of career or what type of job you want to have. So keep that in mind when you're making calls to alumni. It's not, hey, what can you do for me? It's, hey, what do you know that will help me make better decisions about how I pursue a career? And again, I think information that leads me to decide that I don't want to do something is almost as valuable, if not more so, than finding out that I have a passion, because it is very much a process of trial and error. And at the end of the day, I mean, you want to cast your net as broad as you can, but you want to make sure you're pursuing something that you feel strongly about. So again, I would hopefully, Severin, I'm sure we'll be able to distribute this later, but again, use this as an example of, you think Credit Suisse, we think maybe 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities, and the rest of them is, is homegrown. No, we actually recruit for all of these positions. So do your homework on that. This will be hopefully a big component of our discussion later tonight is, know what your employer is looking for. Unfortunately, there's no key to this. Every employer, in fact, every individual who may be sitting across from you in an interview may want or look for different things. I think there are some truths that I think we all accept to be, part and parcel with a career at a bulge bracket, and GPA is probably going to be top of that list. I don't want to tell you what I had, but I guarantee you I wouldn't get an interview slot at Credit Suisse today. Not a chance, and probably not one on any single one of the middle market or boutique firms. So first and foremost, get your GPAs up or keep them up. AS and I were having this conversation among others on our trip today, which is employers are looking for reasons not to hire you, not to hire you. Again, 7,000 applicants for roughly 300 seats. They know they've got the talent, so they're just trying to figure out how they can make that pool that they actually have to do work on smaller, and it starts with GPA. So we've said 3.5. I would say there are exceptions, but not many. So do what you need to do to attain that GPA. Obviously, majors in the coursework you undertake is going to be critical. That being said, I'd like to see you excel at something rather than just do what you think I want to see. But on the margin, obviously, economics is going to be valuable, although candidly somewhat discounted from a liberal arts college. So again, look for, if economics is something you're passionate about, look for ways to differentiate yourself. And whether that means second majors or concentrations or minors or whatever you might pursue in your free time, look for ways to leverage your understanding of economics into real-world application. And I do like multiple disciplines, and I certainly like anything with an international flavor, particularly, again, if you're looking at the bulge bracket space. These are global banks, and both AS and I have worked abroad, and as a function of what our firms needed us to do on any given day. And so I'm not saying you should necessarily be flexible to travel, and you should, but should understand your expertise in kind of anything but the plain vanilla is of extreme value to your future employer. Work experience. I think this kind of speaks for itself, but the recruiting process has already begun. If actually this is the first time you're thinking about a career on Wall Street, you are well behind the curve. Your competitors at other schools have been thinking about this for 6 or 8 months already. So so by next October, I think I can say quite confidently that you will need to have exhibited or demonstrated some internship in a field or a profession that's of importance or relevance to the financial services industry. And again, it could be something in law, it could be something in IT. We'd love to see something in the financial services space, and I think perhaps one of the easiest opportunities to get is in either the private banking or wealth management, often called a home office type institution. Again, to the extent you bank somewhere, your family banks somewhere, and this is quite honestly where the networking piece comes in. These are often, these are representatives or money managers. They can quite easily, their infrastructure supports, summer internships for students at your point in your college career. So it's not necessarily a backdoor, it's just another opportunity, and one that is most readily available to many of you, to the extent you can't find other opportunities at more traditional kind of IB-related positions. So, and then I kind of make this joke, you know, we certainly want to know about any and all work experience you have, particularly those where you have to demonstrate leadership. That being said, you know, I don't necessarily need to know what retail store you worked in and what you did this past summer, or if you were a sailing instructor, unless you can relate that back to how that's made you who you are and how that's made you different from the people that you're competing against for this job. So again, this is kind of a segue into the resume discussion, but again, it's not so much about what you think I want to hear because, you know, it fills a page. Because we're going to double click on basically everything. So you're going to tell us about an opportunity or a job that you had, and you're going to give me one line. And then I'm going to ask you about, you know, give me an example of where you either had to disagree with your manager or you had to go above him because there was something that bothered you about the integrity of the business or the actions that you guys are engaged in. I mean, because that's very much, quite frankly, at the heart of a lot of conversations we're having these days is around culture and behavior. Presumably all of you guys are reading the journal. I mean, not a day goes by where a firm is reporting that they've finally settled with the Department of Justice over some bad behavior. And so employers are very focused on knowing that you've got integrity and that you're going to make the right decisions. So again, as you build your resume, and I should start by saying, please, resumes, you got to get these right. I say here that for more often than not, I view these as things that can hurt you, because there is an expectation that your resume is going to be pristine. There's certainly resources available to you here. Don't get this piece wrong. Again, don't give us an excuse to not give you a job interview offer. But with that being said, resumes really are an opportunity for you to kind of to show your best foot, or should I put your best foot forward, and again, be intelligent as to what you put on your resume and make sure you're able to speak to every aspect of it in a way, again, that shows you in the best light. And then extracurriculars, these are important. Perhaps less so than they used to be. They were often resume fillers, but again, the advice remains the same. To the extent you're involved in extracurricular activities where you're demonstrating thought leadership or strong moral standing, I think those are things you want to include. And again, to the extent that they're important and you're not getting the airtime, make sure you point that out to your prospective employer. Because again, if it's on your resume, it should be something that's important enough to you to want to talk about. Progressing the conversation of, you know, what your employers are looking for. I blatantly stole this from some of our internal material, but I think what I find fascinating, so this is actually part of a presentation that we would and will give to you next year, as you guys are looking for jobs for the following summer. And this is, I think, one of, or if not the last page. And so we tell you all the types of people we're looking for. What I always find fascinating is you don't see economist, you don't see banker, you don't see any. You see types of peoples and principles-based descriptors. And so I think I will go on to say that it's not like we're looking for a person that is a leader and a person that is a problem solver. We're looking for someone that embodies all of these things, recognizing that you may have certain strengths. So again, keep the big picture in mind. There's very little expectation that you guys are going to be proficient in the modeling that we need you to do. In fact, I think it's upon most of these banks these days to train you to be proficient modelers or salespeople. We just need you to have kind of the requisite framework to be able to mold you into kind of what it is and what it is that we need you to be at any point in your career, and recognizing you may start your career as one type of person and find that you become quite a marketing genius, and your career will follow you that way. So don't be afraid to explore, again, the boundaries and your limitations, because I think you'll find that over time and through practice and through collaboration, what you view as some of your weaknesses will ultimately be some of your strengths. So this is getting into a kind of a technical analysis of kind of your persona and your capabilities. This is, we call it a DISC analysis. Every firm's got their version of it. This is the one that we use along with some of our competitors, and we kind of put every new employee through this. And, you know, more than anything, it's just an interesting exercise. But I put this up here not because we're going to do this exercise today, but it's really more of some of I guess some of the nomenclature on the page. And so when we talk about people with consciousness style, tend to be these types of things. Spend some time getting to know yourself and understanding what you think your strengths are and what your capabilities are. That's not to say that investment bankers are here and salespeople are there. Legal and compliance is here, and human capital and human resources is down here. We've got people in all those seats that sit all over the spectrum. But as you think about yourself in this light, it certainly does help you prepare not only for creating your resume or pursuing, you know, internships this summer, but also through the interview process, and certainly to some degree the networking you're going to do with alumni. Again, having that self-awareness is something that is oft overlooked and I think incredibly valuable. So I'm happy to share some insights at a later date, and certainly you could actually go online and conduct this test yourself. But given that we put enough emphasis on it, and we asked 50,000 people to do it, it may be something that's of interest to you to explore in your free time. And then I guess coming to the conclusion here, and it's not terribly glamorous, but and my boss does this incredibly well. He often will do this type of spiel and then close with kind of, what does this all mean, or why is it important? And while I won't do it as eloquently, I feel quite strongly that what's often lost in the shuffle here is the pursuit of what you think you need to be or what you think someone wants you to be. And I'll tell you, those that are best at what we do have a very different perspective on things. And their job is a place where they excel, not because of their passion for economics, but it's often their passion to want to work with a team, to want to, you know, develop friendships, partnerships. You know, they can be competitive. These are people that want to, you know, develop a portfolio, so to speak, to you know, as a springboard to the next stage of their career. So these are just my observations. Take them, leave them. But again, as I think about, you know, what makes me excited to go to work each and every day, it's absolutely it's almost never about, you know, what is my stock going to do today, or what is my competitor going to do, or am I going to win this deal? I mean, those are all valuable components, but when I think about work each and every day and what my priorities are, you know, it always starts with, am I happy? You know, am I healthy? Because at the end of the day, if you're none of those things, you're not coming into work and you're not being productive. My family is always tops, and I would be surprised if any of you would have anything that's different than that too. I mean, that really needs, and whether it's your actual family or those that rely on you, I mean, know that you're coming into work each and every day, you know, often to provide. And so keep that in the back of your mind. My philanthropic interest, and this is one that I would elevate if I could. Candidly, what I love most about my job at Credit Suisse is that they let me come up here and speak with you all and have one-on-one conversations with students, or they let me go and do you know, Feed the Homeless campaign in New York, or they let me be involved in the charities that I am so passionate about. So again, if they wouldn't permit me to do that, I guarantee you I wouldn't be working at Credit Suisse, and I probably wouldn't be working on Wall Street. My integrity. This word gets used liberally and for all the right reasons. Wall Street is certainly very challenged right now with respect to, or at least a perception of a lack of integrity. And so anything that you can do to boost your own and to fulfill that mission of possessing the greatest amount of integrity and displaying that to future employers, first future employers, and then to your colleagues and coworkers. I think you will find that your career is quite fruitful. And then I joke about here. The point of this is that nowhere on here is work specifically a top priority in my life. And it was some of the foundation and the framework that was built while I was here at Trinity, and the interest that I have. And I'm very passionate about music, but I will tell you that the extracurriculars and the passions that you have and develop while you're here will be the fodder for the conversation that you have with alumni and a lot of the networking that you do. And so again, reflect on it. It's not the key to success by any means, but I did want to share with you this notion that for the next 6 months, 12 months, you're going to be very focused on trying to get a job. But have faith in yourself and stay true to what's important to you. And I promise you the rest will fall in line. So I guess with that, I'll stop. I don't think we need to do Q&A now because I think we'll have plenty of time for that. But AS, do you want to come up and say some remarks? Because you're going to get a very different perspective. This gentleman is actually a true banker. I was an art historian in a banker's shoes. So I will let you get to the meat of a lot of this.
All right, thanks, appreciate it. All right. Thank you. It's great to be back at Trinity. I always love coming back. I never get the opportunity to come back as much as I want. To echo the gratitude, first I want to thank Severn, Brett, the CDC. The outreach and effort over the past year in reaching out to you guys, helping you out, is second to none. I've seen her send emails out at 11 p.m., midnight. So it's a great effort, and I think it's going to make a big difference. I think the main plan here is to help you guys determine A, what you want to do, and B, how to get there. And then once you determine that, comes in the resume and nailing your interview, and that comes down to it. So we want to prepare you in the best way possible to nail your future. I'll give you a bit of a history about myself and what I've done in the now 4 years since I've graduated, and what I did at Trinity to try to prepare myself to make the best impression I could on my interviewers. I currently work at Deutsche Bank. I work in structured finance. I specifically work in valuations for a structured credit trading desk. We do anything from basically derivative trading to help debt issuance and debt sponsors for debt placement for our financial sponsors. It's relatively complicated, and to be honest, I don't see a lot of liberal arts kids on the trading desk where I work. I think that is something that I've talked to other alumni and other liberal arts and Trinity alumni, and we would love to change that. The challenges that you're going to face as a liberal arts student, I think, is great, but because you're all bantams and you're all resilient, you know you can overcome that. And it's just a matter of convincing someone and delivering the right punchline. Before I started at Deutsche Bank, I worked at JP Morgan. I worked in London and New York. I covered sovereigns and I covered financials, and I worked in credit risk. And the whole idea was to basically determine the default probability or the risk probability of a country or a corporate or financial institution if they may default on their debt and what that might do. And then trying to trade credit default swaps and interest rate swaps to hedge that. And if you understood any of the last 3 sentences, I applaud you, and you're well ahead of the curve. My day-to-day of the last 4 years has pretty much been modeling, research, speaking, convincing people of my opinions, delivering it up to senior management, watching it get ripped up, basically getting harassed, going back to my desk, doing it again and again until it's correct. And that's where you need to have thick skin, and that's where you really learn the most. So I'm going to go into what I did at Trinity. I was a Bachelor of Science in Economics and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. I was also president of the investment club, and I was the captain of the men's swimming and diving team. Any swimmers in here? Divers? I'm well represented. Good. So I mean, there's a lot of ways to build out your profile, and if you talk to any interviewer, they're going to say we want the well-rounded person. We want the smartest guy in the room who was the best athlete, who did all these clubs, and is like the guy I want to grab a beer with after work. Truth of the matter is, that's ideal. And if you convince someone that you're smart and human and you take an interest in something outside of work, you're off to the right start. I did an internship. I started my sophomore year. I was telling Peter in the car ride up, my freshman summer, I was a lifeguard. I taught swim lessons. I hung out in the sun all day. It was a great freshman year. But when sophomore summer came, it was time to kick in, and it was time to start planning out my career. I knew that I wanted to get into finance. I just didn't know why. And at the beginning of sophomore year, I felt that was okay, and it is. You may ask, how do I figure out what I want to do? And to me, the answer is very simple. You pick up the Wall Street Journal and you read it every morning. At first, it'll take you about an hour, hour and a half, and then soon you'll be able to flip through in 15 minutes, and you'll be done with it. But at the end of that point, the stories you read, which is the same stories that we read in the morning, in the 15 minutes, is what will interest you the most. So if you like IT, then you want to go into IT. If you like reading about an LBO, keep reading about the LBOs and follow the deals, and that's where you'll end up. I got my first internship at a technology startup. The startup was then acquired by another company. It was acquired by Thomson Reuters, and it spun me off into my junior summer internship, which set me up well for my job. That first internship, I got off Craigslist. Not exactly a job site, not exactly the most prestigious place to get your job. It was data entry for a startup, and all you need is something to talk about. So you sit there and you be a sponge and you look at your senior managing, your directors or whatever they call themselves. The nice thing about a startup is everyone's a C-level. I had a 25-year-old CFO next to me. I was like, I don't understand. But he's like, why would I be an analyst if I could just be a CFO? It's nice. But your entire purpose of your sophomore internship is just to learn. So for that, I encourage any and all of you to get into an office-place setting this summer, whether that's volunteering for 10 hours a week at your local family office, getting a PWM internship, leveraging family connections, whatever you can do just to put yourself in the shoes of trying to work in an office setting. I highly advise it. It gives a good talking point. While you're here at Trinity, if you're interested in Wall Street, interested in finance, I think you've got to get invested. I think you've got to get involved in the investment club. And if for nothing else, it's just to understand how stocks work, what the market does. Some of the kids there, especially the seniors and juniors, they've done Wall Street internships, and they bring that experience with them, and they portray that. And you'll learn a ton from just working with a portfolio that you actually invest in, that you make decisions in. And then finally, get involved in any other extracurriculars that you can. I think the one thing you realize once you go out into the working world is that you have a ton of time here. No matter how many majors you have in sports, you can always do more. And that gets very apparent when your hours of sleep goes down to like 3, and it's not your choice. So I'll wrap this up by saying, this is the time to start looking at what you want to do, time to start pursuing it, and we'll all take steps from there to make sure that you have the right resume and that you have the right interviews going forward. In terms of putting the effort in, and we all know this, that's on you. There's a lot of competition out there, and there's just reasons to take down a candidate. Some of them are just, some of them are unjust, but at the end of the day, as Peter said, I think it was 7,000 applicants, 300 people got accepted. That's not very good odds. So you've really got to shine out. You've really got to work hard to make sure you have the best application in there. And we'll take it from there. And I think we have a Q&A with the panel after. So I'll step off now.
David Linden is a junior who has secured an internship this summer at Goldman, so he's kind of on the track that we've been talking about. And Peter Nance thought it would be a good idea for him to maybe give you some of his perspective and experience. And we have a member of the class of 2013 that we're going to attempt to Skype in and have her appear on my screen.
try again.
Yeah.
And maybe this will be a good opportunity. Candidly, this is a much more comfortable setting for me. And Sev wanted me to mention, so one of the distressing elements of trying to speak to this group is I was actually at work until 2 in the morning last night, working on some live deals. But by way of a more formal introduction and bio, I serve as the chief of staff to the CEO of Credit Suisse USA, who is subsequently also our head of investment banking. And I guess so a little bit on my career path. I actually secured an internship with Credit Suisse your last summer. So in between my freshman and sophomore years, I got my first internship at Credit Suisse, answering phone, getting coffee, picking up dry cleaning, moving parked cars. I kid you not. That's really the start to my career. I subsequently got an offer to come back and do that again, and I did. Although with a more formal role around it, and I was actually in charge of creating the new marketing deck for our syndicated loan franchise. We had just migrated it from kind of a more commercial banking model to something where we were lending to financial sponsors and corporates, et cetera. So we needed to put together a new pitch book. So they knew me, they knew my capabilities. They said, here's our project, we need it by September. This was June. So over the next 3 months, I sketched out. Literally, I sketched out with paper, pencil, pen, a pitch book. And I made 40 copies of them. And I turned them over to my boss. I said, I'm done. You can use this however you want. So obviously, they had to remake and redo the entire deck. I tell this story because most people would have expected me to get fired as a result. I think the fact that I literally worked around the clock and did the requisite research and showed the initiative but just lacked the skills and the fundamentals and the knowledge, I think they were confident that by bringing me back into a traditional analyst program where I would get all that training and all that requisite knowledge was what helped them feel confident in giving me that offer, so that I subsequently did come back between my junior and senior year in what was at the time our technology M&A banking practice, go figure. I had some knowledge of semiconductors, and I had a passion for it. So when asked, what do you want to do? Tech M&A. This was 1999. Everyone wanted to do tech M&A. But nonetheless, I got a job, and it was a really hard summer. I don't think we've done it justice. David, you'll get to experience this, and when we get Liz on the phone, she'll tell you all about it. Look, we're not trying to scare you, but it comes back to my point before: is understand yourself, know your capabilities, know your tipping points, because it's not unreasonable to expect that you'll be in at 7, and you may leave at 7. 24 hours later, that's not atypical. Now, I think we've gotten smarter as banks about maximizing, output, and to work someone for 24 hours isn't optimizing anything. That being said, it is kind of part and parcel with the career path, not just in investment banking, but in research and in sales and trading. So, fast forward, I did that for a summer. I guess I did it proficiently enough that I got an offer to come back, not to the same group. They deemed me not quite ready for that opportunity, but they gave me a job offer in industrials. And so I came back the next summer, I did my training, and I joined what was at the time called the East Coast Group. And so we focused on East Coast-based corporates, mostly technology companies, but some general industrials. And where am I going with this? Probably within 2 weeks, I came to the realization that I still didn't possess the skills. And probably within a month, my superiors recognized that, notwithstanding the effort, I didn't have the requisite skills. But they liked my attitude. People liked working with me. So they took it upon themselves to find me a job elsewhere in the bank. So I did something that actually came quite naturally, and I moved over to a more marketing-related, relationship-based role in high-yield capital markets. And this was 2 days before we acquired Donaldson, Lufkin, Generette, which was, think of Barbarians at the Gate, KKR. This is all before you, Nabisco. But this is the these are the guys that invented leveraged buyouts. And so my high yield leverage finance capital markets group of 20 quickly became 2. Me and yep, and our global head, who now I can say fast forward 15 years, is now the CEO of Credit Suisse USA and the head of our investment bank. And it was in kind of that allegiance that I made 15 years ago, offering to do his laundry and get his coffee and move his car, that found me, this seat as a chief of staff to the CEO of Credit Suisse. So I don't think for one moment that my career path is relatable or even appropriate for any of you. I will confess, so I had a 2.4. I had a 2.4 coming out of Trinity. But I was willing to work really hard. And I didn't know what I wanted. And I think that was perhaps my biggest drawback. Oh, and I think we're getting Liz in here. So I'll end my story there to give you a little perspective on kind of why I was saying what I was saying and where I was going with kind of my opening remarks, which is you have no idea what you guys want to do or what you'll become. But leave all your doors open and all your bridges unburned, because I think you're going to find that some of those earliest relationships that you codify may be the ones that springboard your career in perpetuity. So with that, we are going to launch into a very informal panel discussion, and I guess we had it in our heads that we'd have some prepared Q&A, and then we would launch into some audience Q&A. But candidly, I think to the extent that we're pursuing any topic that is of interest to you, please interrupt us, because it's always actually a little bit more difficult to go back and re-engage on a question if we haven't fully resolved it in some of these questions here. And so, Liz, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, we're just doing a little sound check here.
Yeah, kind of. It's a
Little muffled?
not as clear.
Okay. So, is that better? No? So, on the Skype, I guess we call it, Liz Chavez is a class of 13, is an IB analyst at Piper Jaffray. And since we're talking about you right now, Liz, maybe we'll start a line of Q&A directly with you, which is, so for most of the night, to your benefit, we've been talking about kind of the bulge bracket investment integrated banking model. But now you work at what we've kind of labeled as a middle markets, although I would argue in many respects Piper Jaffray does do a lot of the bulge bracket work. But coming back to, let's call it middle market for the moment, can you talk a little bit about kind of how you identified this opportunity that you have today, and what were the steps that you took to secure this full-time position?
Sorry, Brett, I couldn't hear you very well.
Oh.
It's a little robotic. It sounds like underwater.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little better.
All right, so can you talk a little bit about what you're doing now and your path to get there?
Yeah, so right now I'm a second-year investment banking analyst at Piper Jaffray. I'm in the TMT group, which is Technology, Media, and Telecommunications. And so a lot of what I do now is really just kind of helping everyone above me look good. And a lot of what that consists of is helping them work on pitch books, doing some valuation, and then also conducting any due diligence that we might have to conduct for any transaction that we may be on.
And maybe a follow-up question to that, I guess it does precede it, is how did you go about identifying this opportunity? How did you know that there was an opportunity at Piper Jaffray for you? Did you do an internship? Can you hear?
Yeah, so I interned at Piper before I received my full-time offer. And a lot of that, it just all kind of began, really my journey to the financial services world began my first year when I really was introduced to financial services through kind of some of the other seniors at Trinity who were talking about that being their move post-graduation. So my first year, I kind of began looking for internships then, and my first internship was at Morgan Stanley, working in a corporate communications role, which wasn't what I'm doing now at all. It was really just internal and external communications, so handling all of the media within the company and outside of the company. But what it gave me was a really good bird's eye view of investment banking, because that particular team covered every specific aspect of an investment bank. And it was a bulge, so I got to learn a little bit about trading. I got to learn about investment banking, asset management, and from that experience, I was able to kind of narrow down what I wanted. And so my sophomore year, the summer of my sophomore year, I continued to pursue the financial services industry and ended up at City National Bank doing private wealth management and client services. And again, it was far from investment banking, but it showed a thread and a theme to my resume that would ultimately help me going forward. And my junior year was when I landed my internship here at Piper. And that's where I really got the experience that I needed in order to begin a career here as an analyst. And also, also the internship where I learned the most and where I feel that my young professional career was justified.
Great, thanks. David, maybe in the theme of the process of securing a job on Wall Street, or at least an internship, let's rewind a year ago today. What was your mindset? What were you doing? What were you thinking about? What were you doing to prepare for what was ultimately the commencement of an application process, something that is 6 months away?
Yep. So I'd say this time last year, I was still looking for an internship for the upcoming summer. I knew I was going to be going abroad during the fall. I went to the Rome campus, which was great. I'd highly recommend to any of you. And I knew it was going to be incredibly difficult for me to find and locate an internship. So I knew that getting an internship during the summer of my sophomore year was incredibly important, so I could put on the resume and say that I have some experience. So I was able to locate something at a research firm that did macroeconomic research. It was incredibly interesting. I learned a lot. And in the fall, when I was abroad, I was on the CareerLink website trying to find internships which matched my interests. I was applying to them left, right, and center. But unfortunately, the Goldman internship wasn't on there, so I applied to it. Some of the other internships I got interviews for, but not all of them worked out. The Goldman one was a 3-month-long interview process. I got my call late in the program in December, did many interviews with them, starting with Skype and phone call interviews, so expensive phone bills. But it all worked out, and early last month I got the call saying I have an internship. So, subject to a background check, that's what I'll be doing this summer.
Cool. Hey, so maybe let's take the other side of this equation. Maybe not going back a year, but in any given recruiting season, what are the things that you're doing either directly in the way you engage with prospective candidates, but what are you doing at Deutsche Bank to prepare for the recruiting process, and what are the things that you're thinking about as you identify and evaluate candidates?
Sure, yeah. So can you all hear me? Is that good? Sure. Is that better?
Sorry.
So for internships specifically, obviously, as we said before, there's a lot of competition. We're looking for smart kids, looking for smart, driven kids who want to be there. When we're looking for candidates and we get a stack of resumes, I think just from Trinity alone over the past year, we received 40 resumes from Trinity, and we're basically told we need to narrow it down to 4 to 5 to support and then cut it down further from there. And that's just within the school, just within your class. So, some of the things we really look for and some of the things we prepare as we get ready for our candidates is obviously your GPA is at the top. It's the easiest and most decisive way to differentiate the crowd between, those who make the cut, those who don't. As we said earlier, if you're below 3.5, you better have a good reason. And that's just kind of the way it is in the age we live in. And other stuff we look at is really kind of being a well-rounded candidate, pursuing other activities. It tends to lead towards a candidate who gets more of a world culture, a world aspect. Someone you can turn next to you when it's late at night and you say, right, is this person normal? Can they still do the work? Do they want to be here? Is this going to be a liability, or are they going to be a team player? These are the kind of things that we are basically forced to try to identify from a piece of paper. So it says how much of a liability your resume is. When you submit it, how does it help me basically determine if I like you or not without meeting you? Which is a tough gig, but if they're networking events, if there's a way to reach out to your alumni, this is ways that they can try to help you along and give you knowledge, information to prepare you for these moments, and how to prepare your resume, how to prepare your introductions, and give that. And it's all about building up your base through college.
And I may chime in a little bit here. I mean, as we're kind of thinking and talking about the timeline from whether it's the employer's standpoint or from you, although I guess I want to start by highlighting something that David said. He had an internship. So before he was thinking about next summer, so the summer between junior and senior year, he had secured a job between sophomore and junior. So again, just want to highlight that. I want to make sure that all of you, if you haven't started doing that, the first thing you should do tonight is go. Well, I guess don't have Rolodexes anymore, but start thinking about what networking you can do to start thinking about what opportunities may exist. And that follows then all the requisite conversations with career development and the exploration on the web, etc. But again, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to be securing a viable and reputable opportunity this coming summer. Back to the timeline point. Candidly, AS and I are what you call front office. I mean, it is not our job to identify candidates. We may be called in to interview them and evaluate them, but there is a whole infrastructure at any bank, whether it's boutique or bulge bracket, that is their sole job is to go and recruit. And there's plenty of deficiencies in them, and one of them, AS and I talked about, which is there's going to be someone that's not much older than you reviewing the first round of applications. It's going to be a first or second or third year HR rep who's just going through resumes and probably starting with GPA and school, and something that we didn't talk about before that is prevalent certainly at Credit Suisse, and I suspect it exists at Deutsche and our competitors, which is this notion of core schools versus what we call virtual schools, and then that has to do with the way we interact with those candidates, but let's call them core and non-core. Core schools are the schools that you would expect them to be. I mean, those are the schools with the heavy finance background orientation. So that's your Princetons, your Penns, your Harvards, your Yales. And those 8 or 9 schools generally make up a core competency, and those are the ones that have financial resources, and those are the ones that have on-campus visits, and those are the ones that have prestigious alums, pulling the levers. For the rest of the world, and by the way, those make up about half of the students we employ for any given internship. So if we use the number I think that I threw out before, around 400 across the investment bank, 200 of them are coming from those core schools, and the other 200 are coming from everywhere else. So, so I guess back to the timeline question. I mean, so there's a whole infrastructure that chases down those other 200. So while I don't have a tremendous amount of faith in networking in terms of securing your job, getting your name on the radar and getting kind of that incremental piece of support is fundamental to the process, because candidly, you'll submit a resume, but without an email from one of us saying, hey, let's make sure this one stays in the bucket till at least we get a chance to look at it, you may be missing out on an opportunity. So keep that in mind. So again, networking is really for learning about stuff and developing that incremental relationship that gets you past kind of that first round of vetting. So I guess with that, we're going to switch gears a little bit, but it was brought up in one of the conversations we've already started having, and this is to you, Liz. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of, maybe it's not a week in the life, but perhaps a day in the life of Liz on average?
Sure. So the day really starts with just coming into the office, being in at the desk around 8:30, 8:45, and just catching up on emails. A lot of things happen at all hours. You're really on call all the time, so whatever I haven't seen on my BlackBerry on the way in, I'll check on my desk. And then from there, I usually circle up with my deal team members, whoever I'm working on any projects to kind of go over what we've done, what we need to get done, get clients on the phone and see, if we can run by them what we've done so far or what they need, or just get any clarification on what they're looking for. And then a lot of the time is really spent just doing a lot of independent work. One of the skills that I learned best here is kind of working independently with little direction and just kind of being able to figure things out on my own. And I'll spend a lot of the day doing that, just kind of whether it be a pitch that I'm working on or a particular presentation or a model that I'll be working in. A lot of it will be just me kind of taking on that first stab and then being able to present something that's spotless, no mistakes, no errors to my associate, and then ultimately VP and principal of the team. Lunches you usually go out as a team here. We're a small bank at Piper, so there's a lot of camaraderie here, which I like, and it reminds me a lot of being at Trinity, a small community feel where everyone kind of knows each other. So we usually head out to lunch together, but we do bring it back to our desk and just kind of continue on working. From there, we might meet up again just to check up on where everyone's at. I might get another project that I might have to manage as well at the same time, and dinner rolls around, and if you're still around, you probably order on Seamless, you have your meal at your desk, and stay in for as long as you can, and on a good night, you might get home around 10, if not, you might be a little longer, but the next day is pretty much the same. The variance and what makes the job exciting is really the different kind of projects you can work on, and the different kind of industries or subsectors within an industry that you will be exposed to. Or even sometimes the different types of transactions or valuation work that you'll be doing. That's what makes things different, so you never really know what to expect, you never know, you can never really predict what's coming up. Everything's really just sometimes pops out of the blue. And that's really the day. Very unpredictable, but still very fun, very engaging.
As you and I are a couple of years beyond that, but certainly kind of in the middle of the spectrum in the hierarchy, how does the day change as you kind of move up the ladder?
Yeah, sure. So I think this will probably go against any different industry, but as you go up, you're expected to have more responsibilities. You're expected to run the process more and manage more of what's going on. Either that's going to be a deal flow or a specific project, and also the junior people below you. So I still, me personally, at 4 years out, I still do a lot of the analytical work on deal modeling or market research to specifically understand certain aspects of the deal that for our clients or for our client's side or for whatever our guest wants to know. But a lot more of my time versus from when I just started goes into kind of making sure that everything gets done on time and is correct, and that we're managing the workflow in the right capacity.
So I guess, almost switching gears a little bit, but what is it perhaps either that you did, well, I guess pose the question this way, were most of the skills that you learned to be successful in the job that you have today, were they obtained while you were at Trinity, or were they learned on the job?
That's an interesting question. I think it's I actually like this question a lot, because I think it speaks to what Trinity has to offer. So I think there's certain things that you will learn on the job. There's no doubt certain parts about the markets that I work in or deals that I help do valuations for that are completely on the job. I had someone smarter, older, wiser, training me, teaching me how to do what I do. But then there's a certain aspect of your learning you're going to get from Trinity. Some of it's from your classwork, and some of it's from the work ethic. Some of it's from actually learning and how to develop a paper or a test or cram or however you study. That part of it was what you put into college is what you're going to get out in the long run. So if you're used to plugging in long hours from your studies because you have a crowded schedule and you need to practice your time management, that will come through and they'll come back to you and help you out when you're a first-year analyst and you're working the long hours that Liz described. There's certain stuff on the job that you're going to learn, starting with your internship, moving into your analyst programs. Those core work ethic skills that help get you through and make it through your internship, or preparing a pitch deck for 3 months and taking that to your offer, that comes from what you do at school. That really comes from your work ethic and that'll drive you.
So maybe David, to you, can you think of any one or two, whether it's a class or a certain type of coursework, or frankly any experience you had while you were on campus that you think was instrumental or fundamental to, you were getting the job at Goldman, and maybe not to lead the witness too much here, but think back to your interview. What were some of the experiences that you reflected upon, or some of the examples of thought leadership that you demonstrated that you think moved the needle for that interviewer?
Sure. So, trying to think off the top of my head, I'm part of a club called Trinity Sports Network, which essentially handles the football team, and by that I mean we do the radio commentary for them, we do interviews for players. So it really allowed me to be able to talk more on the top of my head. It allowed me to think more about questions I can ask people based on results. It allowed me to do play-by-play and commentating. And when you're in an interview, there's pressure already on you. And to be able to think on the go is incredibly important. I think another thing that really helped me was I'm involved with Hillel and I'm the treasurer for that. So it really allowed me to really get a grasp of finances from that perspective, to be able to lead a club or organization on campus and know and look at your goals and say, okay, we're down this much money, how can I fundraise and how can I get this much money? So I had a few questions in my interview process about, if you have a goal, how do you obtain that goal? To what extent do you go to, while also keeping your integrity? And I think that those two experiences really helped me with that.
Liz, maybe I can ask you more or less the same question. If you can remember back a couple years now, if there's anything particularly that was on your resume or any experiences or coursework that you had at Trinity that you think was instrumental in you securing the job that you have today?
Yeah, so when I was at Trinity, I was president of Levels Latina, which is probably still the only Hispanic organization on campus. And a lot of times, when you come from a liberal arts school and you don't have that big technical background, a lot of what your employers are looking for is that you're an involved person, that you can handle a lot of things, and that you can multitask. So it was something that I was able to sell about myself, as being one, a leader on campus and handling that responsibility, but also being a student, and so managing all of that work and still being able to, one, deliver and have a good GPA, and also run a successful organization, to be able to give details about some of the good events that we pulled off, how I work with other teams, and how I myself can make things happen at my level and at my function as a student back then. So that was important. And also having campus jobs was very helpful. I used to work at the career development office, and it was something that I could also speak to about how I was someone who really helped other students, who was someone who could provide advice and help people out, and also show that I had those detailed, that I had good detailed skills, and that I was a good observer. A lot of what you have to do when you have any kind of job is really pay attention to details and make sure that there aren't any errors in what you do. So that's something that I was able to speak to as well.
Thank you. Maybe I'll share a reflection again. I think when I do remember, I think back to my first real interview to secure that full-time internship at Credit Suisse. One question I got asked was, what experience did you have at Trinity where you had to make a decision that you believed was in the best interests of a collective or another individual that might have been at your own expense? And I reflected and I told a story, and I think I actually had a group interview. There were actually other candidates in the room, and I told the story. I said, well, we were pledging an AD, and we were asked to stay up all night, and this one kid used a certain drug that helped him stay up a lot. And we're going on 48 hours, and this kid was sick, and I had to pull the plug on the pledge process and call an ambulance and get this kid to the hospital. And everyone said, oh my God, you're in a circumstance where there was drugs and all. And I guarantee you that the feedback that I got after my interview was like, that's the integrity question. So don't be afraid to do what you know is right, and take responsibility, take credit for it. Because again, a lot of the 7,000 applicants, we all kind of look the same. And again, don't be afraid to differentiate yourself. And again, I wouldn't recommend putting yourself in a circumstance where that's the outcome or that's the story. But again, it comes back to David's mentioned integrity and your ability to make smart decisions. Because again, they're looking at the end of the day for team players. Okay. So I guess this is another tough question as I'm directed at you. And be as brutally honest as you can. You interviewed a number of candidates from Trinity last year. Can you speak a little bit, without naming names, some examples of kind of the biggest deficiencies that you saw in their candidacy, whether it was resume issues flavor for what some of the pitfalls are, and you know, from firsthand experience, from someone who actually cares about their future.
Whenever I think about a piece of paper in front of you and you're talking about your piece of paper as it's your life, it's a sales pitch. It has to be a sales pitch. You're trying to convince the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the table to hire you, consider you, or you know, whatever it may be. Overarching feedback or overarching sentiment that I felt was that no one was selling me. No one, people were describing to me what they did, but they didn't want it for the job. And I'll tell you what that means. Whenever you go through an interview and you have your resume and you have a line by line, when you create a sentence, it needs to relate to why you want this position. You know, I understand people start working in high school and college and they want to show that, look, hey, you know, I didn't just sit around and watch TV all summer. I was working. It was manual labor. It has nothing to do with finance, but you know, I was working, and I get that. What I need to see that candidate convince me of that. I need to have that candidate convince me that they're a hardworking person, and that hard work and that work ethic is going to pay dividends when they're sitting next to me and I'm asking them to do work at 11 p.m. That's what I need to hear. So when you think about how to, you know, describe what you've done in your career, you need to sell it. Think about where it leads to. A lot of the conversations then, you know, I think if I have a walk with your resume and you don't have any finance experience, that's okay. You're on the phone with me already, so you must have some good stuff in your resume that gets you on the phone. A 10-minute conversation, which doesn't really lead to anywhere except for describing what you've done the last 3 summers, it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't sell me. It doesn't make me really want to ask you more questions. It's your life, and you're putting it in front of me. And you've got it doesn't mean you have to do it in 30 seconds or 5 minutes. If you have a compelling story, start from when you're 5 if it makes sense. If that makes sense to the role you want, you need to present that. And then, as always, finance is a tough industry. You work long hours, you need thick skin, and really to get beyond all that, you just need passion for the industry. Really show me that you know about the bank. I work for Deutsche Bank. Mention something that's international. Mention that you like the bulge bracket, a large factor. You like what they've done. You read something in the news. Really show your passion. Show me that you've done more than just showing up. Some of the candidates, some of the classmates that we interviewed, really lack that conviction. And that's what we're here. That's what we're here to do today. We're here to start setting that ground to build up from it. But these are 2 things that I thought you really absolutely need to do. And it's sell yourself and be passionate about the job you're applying for. And that's the first 2 steps. And from there, we can really dig down.
Yeah, and I may add, it's perhaps a pet peeve, maybe that's not the right word, but one thing that drives me crazy is when somebody calls me and asks me a question for which they could find an answer literally on the cover of our website. So I don't mean to sound too forceful about this, but do your homework. You do your homework already. Do you approach your career as you do math or economics? You don't walk in unprepared when you're delivering speech. So do your homework, because I think it goes to Anne's point. It shows me that you care enough to learn about what Credit Suisse is about, and little things, knowing when deadlines exist. Again, I'd like to think that I should know when our deadlines are. But again, it's not my job to solicit resumes and read them. It's your job to know when they're due. And again, this information is quite readily available. And if you can't seem to find it, you have resources at the school. And only as a last resort are you calling me. Leverage some of the friendships that you have from recently graduated seniors. There's a whole network that's in between me, Aeneas, to some degree Liz, that are at your fingertips. And those are your friends and those are the kids that recently graduated. So again, I won't repeat myself, but do do as much of the legwork as you can, because it shows a number of things. It shows that you care, and it shows that you're ready to do what it takes to move forward in the process. So I don't want the session to drag on too much because no one's asking any questions, but I do want to go back to Liz, because I think this is very much at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish today, and we've addressed it in several forums and in several answers, but Liz, in your opinion, whether it's the top 5 or top 10 or top 2, what is it that you think that the students in this room should be doing over the next 4 or 5 months to prepare themselves for this application process in the fall?
Definitely a lot of research. You should really learn as much as you can. And the best part now about Google and the internet in general is that there are a lot of websites out there dedicated to kind of giving you an overview of what banking is, what kind of questions you can expect in an interview, what are some of the evaluation methodologies, which is a question that you should expect in an interview that you should know coming into the position. And also using your resources that are in the school. The Career Development Center is there to be your platform for success. And you guys should really use all the resources that you have there, the bulk guides that they offer you, the opportunity to connect you with any alumni that could be willing to, who are in banking and are willing to speak to you. All of those resources are good. Speaking to as many people as you can who are currently in the role that you seek is also great because they'll give you more in detail information and speak to their personal experience, and it's also very helpful. And also practicing your resume, practicing your interviewing skills, making sure that you can be presentable, that you know what you're talking about, that you have good interviewing etiquette, and going over your resume. A lot of the things that we do look at the first screen of every resume is whether or not you guys are spelling things right, and if you are actually explaining yourselves well on paper. I've also been a part of the recruiting process for some training students, and one thing we saw was one candidate who misspelled the city of a place where she had interned at, and that immediately was a flag to us. And I'm sure she was a great candidate, but it showed that she didn't have the detailed experience or the attention to detail that as a banker that we would look for. So those things matter. So anything that you give, that you show, you really have to make sure that it's top notch, clean, clear, no errors. And that you know what you'll be talking about, you know what you're getting into, you know what to expect, and you know how to sell yourself as well.
Great, thank you. All right, now I'm going to force you guys to get involved here. We've done a lot of talking, some of it insightful, some of it not so much, but I guess we really want to be helpful to you, so hopefully someone's got a question for us.
Can you guys repeat the question so that we hear it on here?
Very good.
Okay.
Yes.
I know you guys mentioned a little bit about the adversity you guys faced as liberal arts students. Do you guys have any stories to tell about where that became helpful, your education here?
So Liz, did you hear his question?
Please repeat it.
Can you repeat your question?
She basically asked for examples of where, being a liberal arts student, you were able to overcome kind of, I guess, the negative of basically not being from a big school. If that's
Okay.
I can answer that, or start to. Interestingly enough, I'd say my liberal arts education really kicked in after it was kind of self-evident that I was going to lose my job in investment banking and needed to find another opportunity. So I subsequently did that. But an interesting jaunt in my career was for 1 year, this is following the merger or the acquisition of BLJ, and they had a very respectable, I guess, American art collection. And this is really not the answer you're looking for, but I'll go off on a tangent, which is they actually hired me and moved me to curate the lobby of our office building. And I am going somewhere with it. So on the back of that, I actually created a number of, again, I was able to demonstrate my passion for something that wasn't specific to my paycheck necessarily, and I was actually able to build relationships and network within the firm on topics. You'd be surprised how many passionate artists there are in a band of 50,000 people. So I think it was kind of not losing sight of what my skill set was and what my passions were and translating them into an office setting, which, again, I mean, it takes guts. And my examples may not be a good one, but, you know, I think we're often trained to go into finance and try to be like our competitors from the more finance-driven schools. And when at the end of the day, you were hired because you're different. And so I think embracing that is important, and doing it from day one. You know, differentiating yourself along the lines of, you know, being the team player. I mean, because we do hire along those roles. I mean, we will hire people that we don't want sitting next to us, with the hope that they'll be sitting next to someone else doing their job, and then they'll be gone in 2 years. So don't fall into what you think other people want you to be. Be my observation. Yes?
This is a kind of interesting question because I kind of work in a relatively technical role, and there's not a lot of liberal arts, if any, that I've come across. But you know, one thing I've noticed is that when you're from a big finance school, a lot of the guys right and left of me don't have that ability to challenge or pick their head out of the mud and look at the entire picture. And I think that is something that I felt very well educated on, coming from Trinity, coming from liberal arts education. Use that to your advantage. I know I've done that previously. You know, I was in a position where I was reading Fed speeches and summarizing what the Fed was saying versus what Deutsche Bank was doing in the markets. And I wrote like basically a research paper that could have been cut and pasted from my political science papers. Just proving an argument, proving a point. And my boss looked at it, and one of the senior managing directors at Deutsche Bank looked at it, and she said, "You can write, you can argue." And I got pulled up into a higher position with way more exposure. It was much more interesting. Just off of that, and that's something specific to me. But it really is just one example of something that can extend all over the bank or whatever area you decide to pursue.
And because this is actually such a central question or theme to kind of what we're accomplishing, Liz, is there any kind of anecdotes you want to add, experiences that you've had?
Sure. I mean, I would definitely stress the good communication and writing skills that you can get from being at Trinity as being a key differentiator here, because I know when I came in, being able to write well or to just come up with a good synopsis was something that helped me kind of differentiate myself from my peers who would kind of just give things in as notes. Being able to write clear ideas and clear messages and develop a good narrative for things, it really helps. And it's a soft skill that isn't very much emphasized in some of these big top schools, but Trinity does do very well. So I would really play up and make sure that you get as much as you can out of the writing department and any kind of group work or teamwork or opportunity to speak up and lead a conversation as you can out of Trinity, because it really does help. And it's some of those soft skills that a lot of people still continue to look for and are still very valuable.
I could say something
Oh,
about that.
yeah.
Yes. I think a lot of it has to do with how you spin it. I'm a history major and Italian studies minor. That has nothing to do with economics. But at the same time, I have an internship at a finance place. So if they ask you what can a history major do to help us, as I said, like I can read, I can write, I can analyze, I can think of my own, and a lot of the finance institutions really don't have that because they primarily hire economic backgrounds. And you really need to play to your strengths. So for me, I'm very good at writing and reading. I very much enjoy it, and I go to a liberal arts school so I can improve those strengths. So I'm going to use those strengths to really stand out from the rest of the crowd. I've taken a course on World War I and World War II here at Trinity, and a lot of the times within those courses they talk about the economics of the war. That's one of my primary interests, how wars determine history, and a major factor of that is economics. How can economics help determine wars? What do economics say about a country? So I really helped use those during my interviews to help play to my strengths, and I hope to do that during my internship.
Question back.
So I have a question directed, I guess, to you, Peter, because you started your talk today saying there's more than one way into Wall Street, and you guys have all really elaborated how competitive this what other ways can you position yourself to get into the industry? I mean, if the answer is there's not much, that's fine, but I'm just curious.
I don't want to snow job Ace on this, but we had a conversation in the car today, and I will come back and I will get my perspective on it. But Ace actually had a very interesting introduction and advancement into this career.
Yeah. So I actually, when I was a senior and I was a junior, I went out for a banking position. Very competitive. I think 2 people from my class got an investment banking offer. So I didn't get the offer that I wanted. So I went into a consulting staffing firm, and basically they pitched me an offer right to JP Morgan, where I interviewed, but it took advantage of economic inequalities there. So basically, JP Morgan had a hiring freeze, which means you can't hire any full-time employees unless they come through the analyst program, but you can hire consultants. And this company was contracted with JP Morgan. So they sent me out to JP. I was the only consultant over there, and I kind of just morphed my way into their analyst class. And it was a back entrance to JP Morgan, and it was in London. I have not heard of another story like this. I'm sure they're out there, though. There are other ways to get in from the ground and work your way up. In consulting firms, such as at EY, PwC, you get great exposure to the bulge bracket banks because it's a majority of their clients. And you start working on certain transactions. There are other ways. I don't know if this is the right venue to start recommending it or looking at it, but there are staffing type consulting firms in which you could secure a temporary position, even right out of college as an entry level. Again, those are all backups, and I wouldn't pray that anyone goes through the same approach that I went. But I mean, that's just to say that all hope is not lost.
Yeah, and I'm perhaps a little more optimistic, but I mean, I guess in my function, I'm the one responsible for doing the hiring of consultants and looking at the lateral hires that we do, the onboarding of our general counsel. So, and by the way, these are not all lawyers; these are paralegals, these are interns at corporate law firms who many will admittedly say, "I did that because I wanted to get into investment banking or into finance or work at a hedge fund." So let's go back to a comment I said earlier, which is cast the net wide, and that doesn't mean Citibank, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, Wells Fargo. It means Evercore, it means Berkshire, it means Credit Suisse, it means Cravath, it means, if you're so lucky, McKinsey. But I mean, bad example, but it means kind of anything and everything that touches finance, because again, this is not a well-kept secret. I think finance of the future is having a good understanding and a strong background in public policy and law. The regulators demand it of us. You'll have a whole discussion on shadow banking system, but investment banks are going to get displaced. It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. And the Blackstones of the world, again, I'm using big names that you guys are going to know, but I suspect they will have a banking practice within the next 5 years. They're already competing with us on advisory roles, not just M&A advisory, but true like financing advisory and capital markets transactions. So, and maybe that's the irony of all this is that my whole class and those of my era, which is only 15 years ahead of you guys, was let's go become investment bankers so we can become private equity bankers. Where now it's there's a path in many cases directly into those firms as they build out their platforms. You're not going to get a job in their private equity shop, but you're going to get an offer potentially in their COO function, and that's a great place to learn about how a growing industry or a growing platform develops itself, and being on the ground floor in that type of environment, puts you in good standing to get that kind of more senior role. Hopefully that's reflective. I think. Yeah.
David, maybe you have a better answer for this. What would you say are like the must-do steps or steps to take if you're studying abroad in the fall?
Must-do steps if you're studying abroad?
Yeah, like the things to do for the recruiting process if you're going to be abroad.
Yeah, sure. So, Career Services Office is absolutely wonderful here. I would be in touch with Ms. Sand, Mr. Boudreau, talk to them about things you can do, help for mock interviews, look on the Career Links website to see what jobs they're offering. Don't be afraid to look onto websites and say, I want to work in this, I want to work in that, and just submit your resume online. You really have to put yourself out there as much as you possibly can. It can be incredibly difficult, very hard, but you need to do it. I wouldn't sacrifice your opportunity to study abroad just to be able to work for a summer internship, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I would recommend to everybody. But that said, you really do need to put yourself out there. I remember literally my last night in Rome, instead of going out and hanging out with all my friends I had made there, I had an interview. What would I have been rather doing? Having an interview or hanging out with my friends and walking around Rome? So you need to be able to prioritize, you need to be able to put yourself out there and work really hard. And the Career Services Office is absolutely wonderful here. Take advantage of it.
I'll add to that. I mean, this is the one exception where we're not looking for excuses not to give you an offer or get you involved in the process. I mean, it's something that more often than not it's at a liberal arts college, but we anticipate this and we plan for this, and it's really about full disclosure, getting involved early, and continuing to prioritize. I mean, you're going to need to make those long distance calls to facilitate those interviews, but we recognize this is a value to us to have an employee who's had these types of experiences. I also did the Trinity Rome campus experience, and it was supposed to be summer, ended up being about 8 months. So it's been immensely valuable to me to be able to live abroad on my own and facilitated posts that I had in Zurich, in London, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Rio for a little while, Miami. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. But recognize that it's something we deal with and we anticipate, but it's not an excuse to not fulfill your requirements of the program.
If I could just add one more thing. There are students at other top schools, Harvard, Yale, Penn, etc., who are also studying abroad and go through the exact same thing. So I'm sure that the big financial firms know what this is like and go through it with students all the time.
Any other questions? One more. No one? Yes.
So going into your senior year, I'm going to my junior year right now. When do you suggest that we really start seriously searching for an internship for our summer between junior and senior year?
We will, Ace and I and Liz Wall have a perspective on this now. But that being said, I mean, I'll give you a little sense of, and look, every institution's unique, but some statistics would be that our fixed income, or I should say fixed income and equity sales and trading analyst program at Credit Suisse, we will hire 100% of our incoming class from our summer population. 94% in investment banking. So you might be asking, I guess you're asking about not what you're doing this summer, but what you're talking about the following summer. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I haven't even started internships for this summer, so it's hard to put them on the resume already and stuff like that. So I was just wondering about that.
Fair enough. I mean, I think we're talking a little bit about submission deadlines and when is the requisite information to be available to a potential employer. That will all take place in the fall. But what you touch upon is you may or may not have an opportunity for the summer, as you heard me say, and I think as you've heard others say. The process for your junior summer has started. It started a while ago. So candidly, you're behind a little bit. I don't mean to point you out there, but you're a little bit behind. But again, the deadlines really don't come into the fall. It's really that you now have a lot more to accomplish in a slightly shorter period of time. But I can't stress enough the importance, and I saw this actually in a question that I think you guys posed to us that we didn't get to. What happens if you simply just can't secure an opportunity this summer, so in between sophomore and junior year? There are educational programs that I strongly recommend. Tuck does a great one, but there are others out there. I'd rather see you go out showing a commitment to growing your knowledge base in a field that I care about, rather than taking some other, excuse my French, half-ass opportunity that kind of looks good on paper, but at the end of the day, you know is total BS. So explore those options if it doesn't look like something's coming together, because I tried and failed is not going to be a great answer. Which, again, trying to tie back my initial comments, which is securing an internship, if it isn't clear to you all now, securing your internship between junior and senior year, if you want to work at a bulge bracket, that is it. That is the only way right now. That is the only way. Even some of the backdoor antics and some of the shared service type roles, for example, Credit Suisse, we just started doing, but we now have like 16 training programs, and they are designed so that come the senior year, we already have our pool. We don't need to invest any more resource and time in identifying candidates for full-time offers. We will pick 100% of our incoming class from that junior population. But I certainly, I think I can move on. Respect, Dan, do you have a?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of exact deadlines, for each bank will be slightly different, but you need to get your stuff in, your application in early fall, which means that it's middle of April right now. That gives you approximately 5 months or so. It's called 5 to 6 months to get your application in. So as Peter said, and I think you've said a few times tonight, if that takes volunteering at a place, at a family members, at a friend's, an online ad, just going in there and saying, I will work, I'll do whatever you want me to do, I'll do dry cleaning, get coffee, I need something to put on my resume that shows up in an office setting, you gotta do it. So like your steps, your next moves are to secure something over the 3 months of summer, and then during your summer nights, start putting together your resume, start putting together your application, start putting together your cover letters, understand where you want to apply, know the deadlines, know everything at the back of your hand. Because when you get back to school, they're going to come at you really fast. And it's, I've always said, finding a job, finding an internship, it's your 6th class. You have to treat it as such. You have to spend time updating your resume. It has to be perfect. You should want to frame that thing on your wall. You should be proud of it. It's a lot of time, and it's perfection. And the closer you get to this, the pursuit of perfection, the higher the chance you have to land an internship. But you know that your process needs to start yesterday.
Liz, would you agree? Any additional comments?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's been said. I think it's important to not have a summer, to at least have something on your resume. I think having an empty summer looks bad. Any experience that you can gain at any kind of internship is something that you can speak to and show proficiency in something that you've learned. And ultimately, banks do understand that as a sophomore, it's not easy to come across finance internships. But if you can have a job and you can speak to a certain project that you did, and any kind of skills that you have gained, it shows that you are a good learner. And that's a skill that we look for. It's the kind of mindset that you need in order to come into the job, to be able to be a learner, to be professional, and to know how to take orders and work in timelines. And that's something that you can get from pretty much most jobs that you can find right now as a sophomore, even if it's not bankers.
Great. Oh, we do have another question. Yes.
Yeah, if there's time, I don't mean to hold you. I'm actually an Asian studies major, and it's interesting that both of you work for banks that are originally European. Is there any, I've looked at the websites, and is there any value perhaps to applying for different region areas? For instance, I was really interested in working in Hong Kong. So I don't know if that's a realistic question, if it's better just to apply here, or can you apply to multiple areas for the same firm?
So it may not be evident in my execution tonight, but I do run a lot of campus recruiting efforts, and I just ran one in Hong Kong. More statistics. We'll actually take something like 34 interns into just the traditional investment banking program in Hong Kong, of which half will come, I would say the majority will come actually from EMEA, so the UK predominantly, and European countries, some African. But we'll still get 3 or 4 from the States, and they make for very interesting candidates because it is kind of, they generally are Asian studies majors, but it's an interesting proposition, and it's a differentiating quality. And so, look, we love having, just like we love having international students in the States from other countries, our offices in other regions do want that diversity. So, long-winded way of saying, yes, that's advantageous. And yes, pursue those, particularly if you're interested in going there. And maybe that wasn't clear in some of the remarks I made, which is cast the net broadly, by product, by region, by competency. So again, don't be afraid to double click on that. And, I will tell you, we've become much more efficient in getting the expertise where we need it, and we do that mostly through our online marketing. And so explore websites. You guys should be really good at this. And that's where you find great depth of opportunity. So yes, but you worked abroad as well. And what was your sense of the type of international students that you were getting?
Yeah, London's great because it's a melting pot. So there are people from all over the world. I won't pretend to know much about the application process or visas or anything of the specifics, but basic intuition tells me it can't hurt to try. And if you're passionate about it, reach out. I do know there are people from my class that started their career at bulge bracket banks abroad. Two off the top of my head, three, maybe two in Hong Kong and one in India. All traders for Citi, actually. So it's possible. It's not, give it a shot. If that's something you want to do and it helps you stand out, then absolutely.
Yeah.
You guys have all talked about reaching out to alumni, but you're obviously all very busy. Is there any way to be more effective in getting responses from alumni? And getting them to donate time, even if it's just for a coffee?
This one's tricky. I consider myself, not the man of the podium here, but I consider myself to be very open and engaged and wanting to help. You're not going to find that a lot. So I guess one way to approach it is you don't want to be a nuisance. And so I think what you can do, email is great. You give someone the heads up. Give them an opportunity to review your candidacy at their leisure. Cold calls are brutal because again, if we care and we want to be helpful, we want to take that call. But whether you guys talk to each other or it just becomes a pattern, I find that if I take one of those, then I get 15 of those, and then by the 15th candidate, I'm not giving them the effort that they deserve. So I will tell you, obviously working through career services, we're certainly in touch with them, and we're still working on best practices, right? It's hard to tell someone, don't try anything and everything to secure what might be the most important thing you do in the next 12 months. Don't do that. Go through these channels and follow these rules. But it's really about making sure that you're putting, your best foot forward, and if that means kind of playing by the rules, that's what you should do. But I'm being more winded here, but reach out over email. Ask if there's any opportunity to talk in any way you can, any shape, way, or form. Indicate this isn't, hey, I need a job. We like coming and talking to you because it makes us feel good about ourselves and makes us connect with Trinity. That's kind of the sensibility that you want to evoke from alumni, which is let them talk about what they do. More often than not, we don't get to do that. It's a little chest beating, but give them the opportunity to just tell you what they do, and really use it again more as an information session. Because if you're a good candidate, they're going to get off the phone and be like, hey, that guy was pretty cool. That girl was pretty awesome. I need to call them back and tell them to get their resume in. That will happen organically. It's my opinion, but that's also my experience. But yes, you're getting these calls just as frequently as I am. What is your best practice all around?
Yeah, I personally prefer the email method, and to be quite honest, I would be persistent. Just the odds are stacked up against you as it is. Numerous times, I'll get an email and I'll be like, yes, I should meet with that kid. That sounds interesting. And then 10 days go past and I go, did that kid email me? Did I email him back? Did I respond to him? If you're consistent, if you're persistent, you say, hey, just got a cup of coffee, just want to talk, come down to your office. It'll happen. I mean, I can't guarantee that for everybody, but I think it increases the probability that it'll happen. And yeah, but other note, I stress this more, that you really should be, for knowledge and information, you should come with a game plan. But if you do email them enough, they'll get back.
Without us.
They'll get
Everyone else. I mean, was your experience now, I guess you've been on both sides of it now, during the process of kind of looking for the opportunity, but now you're on, the Rolodex, so to speak, at Career Services, students are reaching out to you. What's your preferred method of communication?
Definitely email. I think it's more respectful. A lot of the times, a lot of people you'll be reaching out to, especially if they're very senior, they're on the phone all the time. So your inbound call might be a little distracting and might label you as more of a nuisance as someone who kind of follows up by email. And just out of personal experience, when I was an intern at Morgan Stanley, the first thing I did was I looked at the Morgan Stanley database and I looked up for anyone who was a Trinity alum, found 4 and emailed all 4. Of the 4, 2 responded. One met with me once and gave me a book on Excel, and another became a lifelong friend, really, who constantly just checks up on me and asks me, how are you doing? Can I see your resume? What are you working on? Has really taken a stake in my professional career and has been a great help, and who also connected me to other alumni at Trinity, connected me to my current boss now, and also kind of really helped me secure the position that I'm at now. So one thing that I can say about networking is that if done right, it does work, that it is very valuable, and that beyond just that initial step of maybe just getting your resume into a recruiter, you can really build a lifelong friend, a lifelong mentor who can help you through all areas of your future growth as a professional. And I would say that definitely it's something that is worth the risk. Don't be discouraged. You won't always get a response, but as I said, don't give up also, and be a little persistent, but not too much. And make sure that what you write, what you express is honest, and that you're not, right out just asking for a job. Be more respectful. Ask them about them, what they do, if they have time to talk to you and to tell you more about them, if they have any advice and they can give you. And from my perspective, the alumni that I've met, they really do want to give back. A lot of people who graduated from Trinity have had great experiences, and they care about the brand, they care about the name and the legacy that it has. So when they have someone younger who's been in their shoes, who they can remember being in that shoe, in that role of someone who's really seeking mentorship and information, they will oblige and they will help, and they will want to help you and see that brand and that legacy continue through investing in you just a little bit. So go for it.
David, you just did this.
Yeah, you really do have to be persistent. During last summer, there was this Trinity networking event in New York City that I went to, and I had emailed IS after saying, hey, is there any chance I can shadow? I was very persistent. It didn't work out, but it's because I had an interest. I was very persistent. I wanted to learn as much as I could. I think one other thing that I learned after emailing tons of people is that people are people first. They have feelings, they have a family they need to care about. And during my interviews, I had a second interview with the same person who I had the first time. And one of the things I did was I asked them about something they said the previous time. And they were really impressed, they said, with my follow-up skills. So I was really interested in their story. They were a lawyer at one point, and they eventually came to Goldman through another channel. And I didn't understand that, so I wanted to ask them about that. The finance aspect just wasn't my top concern. My main concern was knowing more about them, because I'm going to be working in asset management. And part of that is having a relationship with clients, and having a relationship with clients is about knowing about them and their families first.
That's a good answer. Yes. That's a good question. So,
We can talk to you a little bit in the career office about that. There should be no need to work your OPT while you're doing an internship.
Yeah.
As long as you do it for credit, you can just do CPT. The tricky part becomes working for a firm that is open to eventually sponsoring people who end up working for them, because as we've talked about, it often works backwards. So the firm wants to hire permanent people. So in order to do that, they hire a bunch of interns to train them and check them out. So in order for you to get an internship, knowing that you're maybe going to be a full-time employee, they have to be ultimately willing to sponsor you. And that's the tricky part. They don't have to worry about anything in terms of specifically sponsoring you, or you don't have to worry about OPT for the internship. It's the permanent. Does that answer your question?
thank you.
And that's something we can talk more about in a smaller group in the future. Anybody else?
Yeah.
So I know at a lot of banks, really competitive and smaller rooms like the M&A advisory we call investment banking. Do you think that coming from a non-departmental school, it would be smarter to try to go the sales and trading, asset management, private banking route?
Except for the fact that the joke is out and now everyone is doing that. So it's probably more competitive in sales and trading than it ever has been. Look, I mean, I think I would lump financial sponsors and M&A generally in that bucket of most coveted, highly technical. You don't want to get in the way of some kid from Harvard getting in a job at Blackstone, right? I mean, and that's his path. That being said, I mean, it comes back to what's your competency. I certainly wouldn't shy away from pursuing that, but you have to know pretty firmly that M&A is for you, not just because you know it looks good, because you're going to be put to the test, and you're going to be put up, just candidly, you're going to be up against the strongest candidates. I mean, like, again, if you want to peek behind the veil of investment banking, I mean, I think the hierarchy, depending on the firm, will be M&A, sponsors, technology, media, telecom, industrials, healthcare, retail, consumer. And that's more or less the hierarchy. But again, I mean, there's some firms that do some of those better than other, and therefore those become the coveted jobs at those shops. I mean, CS, I do believe we have the best sponsor platform. And left over from some bad behavior that we did in the 90s, we still have arguably one of the best technology platforms. I was given the opportunity of doing industrials or retail, and a wise person said, if given the choice at your firm, go for that job. It didn't end up mattering for me, but again, that's the homework that you can do on your own, and that's also the homework that you can do with the networking piece. Because every firm is going to be a little bit different, and that's a tough question to ask an interviewer. What are you good at? What are you bad at? They're going to say they're good at everything. But if you develop a strong relationship through networking, you can say, hey, where are the odds stacked in my favor or against me? Or feel free to ask, based on how you perceive me, where do you think, I would fit in? But back to your more general, broader question of, is it investment banking or sales and trading? I think they're both very competitive. I think they're all very competitive, and I would throw capital markets in there too. That was, as I was telling you, that was the dump. That's how I got that job. That's where all the failed bankers went. It just so happens that that's now by far our most vibrant and viable franchise. That's just luck. But again, if you have someone on the inside that can guide you through the various opportunities, and give you some insight as to how you think you stack up at any one of those. That is the preferred approach, but obviously knowing all the opportunities that exist and doing some homework, whether it's through the materials that I provided or what's available on the website, I think you'll come to some conclusions